The photographs were not souvenirs. That is the detail that changes everything else about this story. When Edith Piaf agreed to perform at Stalag 3A, a German prisoner of war camp outside Berlin, in the winter of 1944, the official reason was the one the arrangement required: a famous French entertainer traveling to entertain French prisoners. The papers were in order. The German authorities had approved the visit. The photographs that would be taken during the performance were, as far as the official record was concerned, the ordinary documentation of an ordinary cultural event. The photographs were not souvenirs. What they were was identity documents. The prisoners photographed standing beside Piaf during the visit, smiling, carefully posed, holding the expressions of men who understood that what was happening in front of the camera had a purpose the camera itself could not acknowledge, would receive, in the weeks that followed, false identity papers built around those photographs. Papers that said they were not who they were. Papers that said they were someone else, someone free to leave. Papers that allowed some of the Jewish prisoners at Stalag 3A to walk out of the camp in an identity the camp would not look for. To understand what she was doing, you have to understand what the arrangement cost and what it required of the woman at the center of it. French performers could petition the German occupying authorities for permission to travel to the prisoner camps and entertain French prisoners. The permissions were granted selectively. A performer with Piaf's profile, famous, not overtly political, not publicly associated with the resistance, could obtain permission with less difficulty than a performer whose activities were already being watched. This was, in part, why she was chosen, or why she chose herself. What she gave them in those rooms was the songs they knew. The songs she had been singing in the cabarets and music halls of Paris since the mid-1930s. The songs these men had heard before the war, in the rooms they had been in before the war, in the lives they had been living before the war. The songs were Paris. The songs were the world they had been taken out of. The songs were proof that that world still existed and that they had belonged to it. This is the second payoff, and it reframes the entire performance. The songs were not entertainment. They were evidence. Evidence that Paris was still there. Evidence that the world before the camp was still real. Evidence that the men in the audience had been real before they were prisoners, and would be real again when the imprisonment ended. The voice was the evidence. The voice said, "I come from there. It is still there. And you are still the people who come from there too." The rehook lives here, in the question of what the men in the audience understood was happening. Because some of them understood both things simultaneously: the performance and the purpose, the song and the photograph, the voice that was Paris and the documents that would let someone be someone else. They were sitting in a prisoner of war camp listening to Edith Piaf and understanding that the woman on the stage was risking something she did not have to risk. She had the permit. She had the official approval. She could have come, performed, accepted the photograph, and left. What she had added to that arrangement, the connection to the document forgers, the specific use of the photographs, the deliberate construction of the false identities, was not in any official document. If that was discovered, the word performer did not describe what would happen to her. She did it anyway. Not once, she came back and back again. The arrangement was this: she obtained permission. She traveled to Stalag 3A with her accompanist and a small party. She performed. She was photographed with the prisoners, groups of men, carefully arranged with Piaf at the center. The photographs were taken with the specific care of photographs that are going to be used for something. They were delivered to the false document forgers who were part of the resistance network operating inside and around the camps. The documents were produced. They reached the prisoners through the networks the resistance maintained within the camp. And some of those prisoners, in the months that followed, used the documents. The production of false identity documents was not a minor undertaking in occupied France. It required paper, official stamps, the cooperation of forgers who were themselves at risk, and a distribution network that could move the documents without being detected. Every link in that chain was a person who could be arrested. Piaf was one link. She was not the chain. But removing her link, through arrest, through discovery, through the exposure of her role in the photographs, would have damaged the chain enough to put other links at risk. She went back. The visits continued. The photographs accumulated. This is the first payoff, and it recasts everything about what Piaf was doing in the public world of Paris in those years. She was performing for German officers in Paris music hall audiences. She was the face of French entertainment under the occupation. Visible, available, apparently uncontroversial. And she was using the access that visibility provided to move false papers into a prisoner of war camp. Between the camp visits and the music hall performances, she maintained the same surface, the same black dress, the same voice. Nothing in her performance told the German officers what the photographs from the camps were being used for. This was the specific nature of the cover. Her visibility was the protection. A woman so famous, so apparently transparent in her emotion and her art, seemed unlikely to be a vehicle for organized document forgery. The German security services in occupied Paris were not naive. They were actively working against the resistance networks. But the assumption that a celebrity performer was also a participant in document forgery was the kind of assumption that took time to arrive at. She was using the time. After the war, Piaf did not speak about this publicly in the terms that would have made it a story. She gave interviews in which the camp visits were mentioned, but she did not frame them in the way a person seeking recognition would frame them. She was not particularly interested in being recognized for this. She was interested in what she had always been interested in: the performance, the next performance, the work itself. The people who eventually told the story in full were the survivors, the prisoners who had received the documents, who had walked out of Stalag 3A on papers built around photographs taken beside Edith Piaf, who had rebuilt their lives in the years after the war and who understood what those photographs had been for. Their accounts came slowly, in the decades after the war, in the form of testimony that takes time to become available. The testimony of people who needed to be certain the danger was past before they described what had been done inside it. She returned to Paris after each visit and went back on stage and gave the next audience everything she had, in the same black dress, in front of the same microphone, as if what she had done in the camps was simply what was required of someone with access and a voice. The photographs were not souvenirs. They were the most specific thing she could have given to the men who needed them, a way out that the camp could not see coming, hidden inside an image of a famous woman who had come to sing them songs they already knew. She gave them the songs. She gave them Paris in a room that was not Paris. And she gave some of them a way out, built into the photographs that the camp officials watched being taken and did not understand. She came back to Paris. She went back on stage. She never made it a headline. The men who walked out knew why.